And I've seen it over and over. That clam, that oyster, that snail, maybe a little piece of turtle shell, whatever it is that a kid finds, that little fossil is more important to them than all the T-Rexes in all the museums of the world, because they found it with their own hands and they made that personal connection between themselves and the Earth's deep past.
This is Life's Tough, Explorers Are Tougher, and I'm your host, Richard Wiese. Scratch the surface of an explorer and you'll find an adventure and a great story. This show is about their tales. This podcast is a proud supporter of the Explorers Club and the EC50 Initiative, 50 people changing the world that the world needs to know about. For more information, go to explorers.org. Our guest today, Dr. Kenneth Lacovara, is best known for his discovery of the Dreadnoughtus, possibly the largest dinosaur ever to roam the Earth. He is founder of the Edelman Fossil Park at Rowan University in New Jersey, author of the best-selling book, Why Dinosaurs Matter, a hell of a treehouse builder, and during his free time, a professional jazz drummer. Welcome to Life's Tough, Ken.
Thanks, Richard. Great to be with you.
So, I have to start right in New Jersey. When you do a Google search of New Jersey, dinosaurs are not the thing that sort of pops up first. And so you have this fantastic fossil park, the Edelman Fossil Park. It's in southern New Jersey. It is perhaps the most unique dig site in the world. Take me through why New Jersey and why the Edelman Fossil Park.
Sure. Well, when you think of New Jersey, you should think of dinosaurs. The world's first nearly complete dinosaur skeleton was found in New Jersey in 1858. The world's first tyrannosaur was found in New Jersey, a mile from the fossil park, in 1866. So it's really a great place for dinosaurs. And at the Edelman Fossil Park of Rowan University, we have the best exposure into the Cretaceous period, into the last of the time of the dinosaurs, really east of the Mississippi. It's one of the most important exposures of this time in the world, I think. And so if you go back 66 million years ago to the end of the time of the dinosaurs, the world is very warm, it's very verdant. There's no ice in the poles, there's no ice in the mountains, all that water is in the ocean. So it raises the level of the sea by hundreds of feet, so much so that at that time, the Gulf of Mexico came up through North America and connected to the Arctic Ocean. So North America at that time was really two big islands, and New Jersey would be off the east coast of the eastern island of North America. Now, all dinosaurs lived on land, and this was a marine environment. But what happens is that sometimes dinosaurs die on the beach. And this has actually been shown experimentally. It's kind of gross. But when an animal dies on the coast, they can end up in the water. They'll get a lung full of water. They sink. And then the bacteria go to work. And the decay gases build up in the carcass. And these giant dinosaurs become like these huge bobbing meat buoys floating out to sea. And as the carcass rots, then parts of the skeleton start to drop out to the seafloor. And that's where we find them as fossils. There are marine deposits, they're terrestrial animals, but we get this great mix of both marine and terrestrial at the Edelman Fossil Park.
The Edelman Fossil Park is, and I've been there several times, as you know, digging with my kids, your kid. It's behind a Lowe's department store. And when you think of dinosaur digs, you might think of Mongolia. Obviously, Argentina plays a big role in your discovery of Dreadnoughtus. How did you come upon this area off of Exit 2? What is it? Swedesboro, Exit 2, New Jersey Turnpike?
Remember, in the Cretaceous, this is not New Jersey, right? This is a wild country like every other spot in the world. And dinosaurs were cosmopolitan. We only think of them from places like Mongolia and Montana and Patagonia, because that's where the rocks are exposed now, because those are deserts and badlands and you get good rates of erosion. But they were all over the planet. So anywhere on the planet where you have rocks of the right age, if you can get to those rocks, you can probably find dinosaurs. And we have essentially an artificial badlands at the Edelman Fossil Park. It's a former marl mine. Marl is a farmer's term, but it's a kind of sediment. It's a marine sediment that is a very good fertilizer. It's also used as a water treatment product. And so we have a 4-acre quarry there that, when you're in it, very much looks like a badlands. So now we have rocks of the right age and we have the exposure. And paleontologists had known about this place for decades, long before me. I mean, if you want to find a paleontologist, just dig a hole, right? And they will show up. So I began going there in the early 2000s. Really, I was a professor at Drexel University in Philadelphia at the time, and really just to have a place where my students could collect some fossils, where they could be trained in excavation. But my research mind wasn't really in it. I would go then off to Egypt or Patagonia or the Gobi Desert or places like that doing my research. And then it slowly dawned on me as we started excavating more and more, and I have to say, like, embarrassingly slowly, that this place was important. And in 2011, the mining company there started to go belly up. And the township had a plan that they were going to fill in the quarry and build a shopping plaza, like a Costco or something. And by then I knew that it was pretty special, but I still didn't know fully how great it is. And I thought, well, it would be really a shame to lose this resource. It's so close to, a populous area. So I marched into the township office in my muddy green boots. I happened to find a woman. The first person I met was Michelle Bruner, who you've met, I know. And I said, do you know what you have here in your township? Do you know the amazing treasure that you have? And she didn't. And so she took a ride with me. We went over to the quarry and she got it like that. And then she was in gear. We formed a team and we tried to preserve this 65-acre property. And eventually that precipitated my move from Drexel University to Rowan University, because the president of Rowan really got the significance of this and had the university buy the quarry. Gene and Rick Edelman stepped up a year later and donated $25 million, an amazing gift, to get the Edelman Fossil Park off the ground. And now we are building a $67 million museum. It'll be a 45,000 square foot building that will open in the spring of 23. And it will have exhibit halls that will feature the dinosaurs on the East Coast. Nobody else does this. Usually when you go to a museum, it's just a hodgepodge of whatever they happen to have collected. So this will feature the dinosaurs of the East Coast. And then you go into the next gallery, and it's the creatures that actually were right under your feet, the creatures that were found on the property, like a 55-foot long mosasaur and lots of sharks and crocodiles and turtles. And then we go into a gallery called the Gallery of Extinction and Hope. And that will take the visitors through the events that precipitated the world's 5th mass extinction, in which the dinosaurs and 75% of species went extinct on our planet. And we have uniquely occurring evidence of that event right at the Edelman Fossil Park. And then we go forward into the 6th extinction. And we will show our guests the truth of climate change and the biodiversity crisis and everything that is unfolding as a result of humans, and then give them hope. Hope to stabilize our climate, hope to save and restore our environment, and hope that they can act not only as individuals, but to group together with organizations like the Explorers Club to do things that they wouldn't be able to do on their own. So we're really trying to activate people to use the past as a lesson for the future, because, if you learn to read the rocks like you were a geology major, wherever you go in the world, the rocks will whisper the same thing to you. And what they always say is, it didn't have to be this way. It didn't have to be this particular way. Like the Earth didn't have to have dinosaurs, but that's just what happened. And then they dominated the terrestrial ecosystems for 165 million years until accidentally they were snuffed out by an asteroid collision that didn't have to happen. And the Earth didn't have to have humans, and it doesn't need humans. And our persistence on this planet is not foreordained. We're not the recipients of some cosmic proclamation of manifest destiny. We got lucky. And if we want to continue to be lucky in the future, we have to care for and shepherd this little ball of rock that we live on, as Carl Sagan said, the only home we've ever known.
Ken, it's interesting that you mentioned it didn't have to happen this way, and that serendipity always plays some role on a mass scale, but also personally. I mean, I've known you for a while, and you didn't have to happen upon the largest dinosaur ever found, the Dreadnoughtus in Argentina. You didn't have to happen upon this pit in New Jersey. One of the things that you fail to mention right here and why it's so special is that smoking gun aspect of Edelman Fossil Park. You care to elaborate on that a little more?
Sure. And, I should preface this by saying that this is research in progress. But what we appear to have there is we can see that we have a mass death occurrence near the bottom of the quarry. And we can also see that it lines up right at 66 million years, which is when the world's fifth mass extinction occurred. Now, the question always is that really a mass death event, or did those skeletons accumulate gradually? We can see that they didn't, because we have really exquisite preservation of these skeletons, all kinds of really fine and subtle details preserved that would not be preserved if these skeletons, got roughed up while they were transported, or if they sat on the seafloor for a long time. So we can see they all lived together and died together and were buried together. And it doesn't seem like it's just a local effect, because what we're seeing is evidence of terrestrial disturbance, things that are floating out and sinking on the seafloor, including lots of wood, which would have happened that terrible day in Earth history, lots of marine creatures dying. And then we start to find the signatures of the impact itself. So it's looking to us like the one place on the planet where you can see an ecosystem that has collapsed and fossilized at the end of the Cretaceous period, in the world's fifth mass extinction. The only place on the planet where you can really see that is in this quarry behind the Lowe's in southern New Jersey.
Our mission is to empower the next generation of explorers. If you like this podcast, please recommend it to a friend and have them join the expedition. And, the other fantastic aspect of it is, again, we know of famous paleontological sites in Mongolia, even in Alaska, a lot of places, but I can't think of another one in the world that is so close to large population centers, New York, Philadelphia, and that the people who go to your park can actually go home with something they find. Can you think of another place in the world where there is something like this?
I really can't, Richard. And that's one of the things that I really love about the Edelman Fossil Park. I mean, there's La Brea, right? But you don't want to let your kids go in the tar pits. So we have layers in the quarry above this research layer that obviously we, protect and curate very carefully. But above that, just after the time of the dinosaurs, there's still a lot of fossils to be found. And visitors can go into the quarry and with their own hands find a 65-million-year-old fossil that hasn't seen the light of sun until that very moment when they touched it. And they can be explorers. They can be discoverers. And I've seen it over and over. That clam, that oyster, that snail, maybe a little piece of turtle shell, whatever it is that a kid finds, that little fossil is more important to them than all the T-Rexes in all the museums of the world, because they found it with their own hands and they made that personal connection between themselves and the Earth's deep past. And so it really can just be a magical place. And the reason that's so important is I always call dinosaurs, I call them the gateway drug to the sciences, right? And
Definitely.
We bring kids to the fossil park and literally we're giving them free samples, right? And we get them hooked on science through fossils. And the world doesn't need millions and millions of vertebrate paleontologists. But if you inculcate them with the scientific method, if you give them the tools to receive and process information in rational ways, well, now that's the way they think. And they can go on and apply that thinking to other disciplines in science, to engineering, to business, to whatever. And so we think that we're growing scientists, we're growing engineers, and we're just growing better minds by getting kids excited about science and the scientific method early on.
Can you ever reflect on how your life has evolved? Because I've known you a long time and there has been really one great event after another. You started as a kid, probably interested in dinosaurs, but did you ever see it going to where you would be overseeing a fossil park right outside of where you live, that you were sort of the toast of the TED Talks? You received the highest honor from the Explorers Club, the Explorers Club Medal. You've been on the front page of the New York Times. I mean, how do you keep it in perspective?
Well, I didn't expect any of this. I can't say I was out to achieve any of this either. I mean, really what I did was I followed my passion, and my passion turned into a career, and my career then has been dotted with some of these events that you noted. But really, I consider myself very fortunate. And, have I worked hard? Yeah. I mean, I've busted my butt, as you have, as, I think almost all successful people have. And it's not hard to find at the Explorers Club people to admire. But I think in all those cases, there's hard work, but there's got to be luck also. And I feel immense gratitude for the good fortune that I've experienced. My father was a carpenter. People talk about first generation college. I'm first generation high school. So there was no academic expectation for me whatsoever. And so I just feel very fortunate that it turned out the way that it did. And the one thing that I think kind of unites the people in the Explorers Club is that you're willing to take a chance. And the successes that I can point to in my career have all been because I was willing to go to places that other paleontologists weren't willing to go. I was able to dig in conditions that a lot of people wouldn't want to dig in. I took chances, building a museum and a fossil park. I'm not trained in this. It's a big chance, but I think all explorers know that, if you see a door that's cracked, you kick open that door because, that's how the magic happens, right?
So what did your parents think of your career direction? You mentioned that, graduating high school was a big deal. Obviously, you went on further. Did your father live to see you get a PhD?
He did. My mother didn't. My mother passed, unfortunately, while I was in graduate school.
That had to be tough.
It was really hard. Probably the hardest thing I've been through. I actually took a year off graduate school to move home and to care for her while she had breast cancer. So that was a rough year. My father got to see me earn my PhD and become a professor, and he never quite understood what it was that I was doing until, and you'll appreciate this, until I got on television. And then it was then he became like my one person press agency. And it was like, hey, my boy's on the television. And so that was, after that, then that was the seal of approval. And he was a big fan of it all after that.
Did you have a mentor, somebody that you looked up to who was sort of, that you said, man, I want to be like so-and-so? Who was your hero growing up?
Well, I did. And I only got to meet him briefly once, and it was Carl Sagan. I didn't know any scientists. I didn't know any professors. The only people that I really knew that went to college were my high school and grade school teachers. But when Cosmos came out, when that book came out and the television series, I had read that. And I was actually, at the time, I thought I was going to be a professional musician. As you mentioned, I play the drums, and I had started to have a career that way. I was the house drummer at the Golden Nugget Casino in Atlantic City. And, for a young guy, I was making a ton of money. It was great. But I had always been interested in geology and in fossils since I was a little kid, since the second grade. And I read that book, and I felt like he had just drilled into my brain and was speaking just to me. And I thought, no, I have to be a scientist. I have to find a way to be a scientist. So I went back to college. I took what is now called a gap year. Back then, it was just called dropping out. Finished my degree, got straight A's in my last few years. That got me into a good master's program at the University of Maryland, did really well in that. And that got me into one of the top geology programs in the country at the University of Delaware. Did well there. And then I got very lucky to land a professorship right out of the gate at Drexel University. And then the very first expedition I got to be involved with, I had teamed up with some colleagues at the University of Pennsylvania, which is literally across the street from Drexel. And we had hatched this plan in 1999 to go to the Bahariya Oasis in Egypt, which is nowhere. It's halfway between the Mediterranean and Sudan, halfway between the Nile and Libya, so nowhere. Because in 1911, a German paleontologist, Ernst Stromer von Reichenbach, had found 4 new species of dinosaur there, including the iconic Spinosaurus. It's T-Rex size with a 6-foot sail down its back. It was in one of the Jurassic movies. Eventually got all that material to the Bavarian Museum of Paleontology in Munich. And then in April of 1944, an Allied air raid destroyed the museum and wiped out those species. And most dinosaur species are known from single specimens. So the world lost those species, they became known as the lost dinosaurs of Egypt. So me and a couple of friends at Penn, we hatched a plan to go back to Bahariya and recover the lost dinosaurs. And we couldn't figure out a way to fund it. And then we made a connection with somebody at a film company in Los Angeles. And they decided, well, this would make a great television documentary. But then they had to figure out a way to fund it. And the way they got it funded was Anne Druyan, Carl Sagan's widow, funded my expedition to launch my career to go to Egypt. We didn't find the lost dinosaurs, but in the process, we discovered a new dinosaur that I named Paralititan, which at the time was the world's second largest dinosaur. So it was Carl Sagan's book that really inspired me to become a scientist. And then it was Anne Druyan who really helped launch my career. So very symmetrical.
Yeah, it's very ironic too. And I know you've had a friendship with her over the years.
Yeah.
I also reflect a little upon your experience as a public speaker. You're famously one of the most popular TED Talk speakers. People seem to love your talks, and it's not hard to understand why. And I think your TED Talk mentor was Monica Lewinsky. Mm-hmm. Did that all seem kind of, again, a pinch me kind of moment?
It can be a little surreal. I mean, usually when I meet famous people, I mean, they're just people, and I try to interact with them in that way. And that usually works well, because I think for the most part, they think of themselves that way also. But there are moments, I mean, when I was standing up on the red circle giving my TED Talk, I look out in the audience and, there's Bill and Melinda Gates, there's Sergey Brin from Google, there's Goldie Hawn. I look over there, there's Harrison Ford. I look over there and there's Cher. I just thought for a moment, like, where am I? What happened to me? And then I thought, I'm the professor. This is my classroom. I'm just going to do my thing, and kind of all the tension drained out of my body. And by the end of it, I had this little meta narration like, hey, I'm giving a TED Talk and it's going okay. And there's Cher. And then I got off the stage. Everybody stood up and clapped, and it went really well. I get off the stage. I walk down the steps, and Cher pops out of her chair and gives me a flying hug. And it was
my God, that is so surreal, because you and I both grew up, and Cher had a TV show, the Sonny and Cher show.
Sure, yeah.
And she had all these hits, and to suddenly be hugged by Cher just seems so random in life.
It was crazy. It really was.
So Ken, you have a book, and it's fantastic in case anybody has not read it. It really, in a very intelligent, entertaining way, states a case. Why dinosaurs matter. So why do dinosaurs matter?
Well, I could have used almost any animal, but I chose dinosaurs, right? Because people are interested in dinosaurs, because they are that gateway drug. And really the answer to that question is, I would reframe the question as, why does the past matter? And the past matters because the future matters, right? And, our present is nothing, right? Like the sentence I am speaking right now is already in your past, right? So the present is nothing. The future, we don't have access to, right? Nobody can do experiments in the future. Nobody remembers the future. So where do we get our information? We get essentially 100% of it from the past. And it was Winston Churchill who said, the further back you look, the further ahead you can see. So if we really want to understand these mega changes that are going on our planet right now, if we really want to understand the deep and perilous environmental future that we are sailing into, we have to look to the past. We have to attend to the past. And there are answers there. And the answers, frankly, are scary. And, as I mentioned before, like the Earth didn't have to have dinosaurs, and it doesn't have to have humans. And if you look at the dinosaurs, their hegemony spanned 165 million years. They're doing great at the end of the Cretaceous. They're biodiverse. They're cosmopolitan. If you were on Earth the day before the end of the Cretaceous, you would look around and you would think, these things are going to be in charge forever. There's nothing that's ever going to put the dinosaurs out of business. And then the asteroid hit, and probably within an hour, they were all gone. They were all dead. And when you think about the contingency of that, asteroids form at about the same time the planets form, right? So all this solar system material is all about 4.5 billion years old. And that asteroid had been out in the asteroid belt for almost that whole 4.5 billion years. It just came in 66 million years ago. If you go out 4.5 billion years ago and hit that asteroid with with a piece of popcorn or blow on that asteroid, which I guess you can't do in space exactly, well, then it doesn't hit the Earth 66 million years ago. And the dinosaurs, which are dominant for 165 million years, why not another 65 million more? And so, we really have to understand the past, and we really have to see how contingent it all is as we go forward into the future. And right now, it's hard to have hope because of what we're doing to the planet and the climate limits that we have already exceeded. And the reality is we have broken the planet, and it's not going back to its former state within the lifetime of our civilization. And so now the challenge is, how do we stabilize it? How do we stop further damage? And how do we maintain the planet in a state of sustainability before it really spirals out of control?
Ken, I've always thought of you as an optimist. Whenever I talk to you, you're very upbeat. You're a problem solver, or you look to solve problems. If someone were listening to this and they thought to themselves, man, I'd really like to put myself on a good trajectory. My past is my past, but the future is still open. What advice do you give people to sort of set their life on that upward trajectory?
Well, first, I would say that hope is a choice, right? Hope is not some empirical derivation that we derive from the data. Hope is a choice. And I am hopeful about our future. I'm hopeful about the environment's future, not based on data, but because I choose to have hope. And having that hope then makes it possible for me to engage in action. We all have to band together to do what we can do. And, certainly there are things that we can do as individuals, and they help. But you can do what you can do as an individual, but more impactful is band together with groups like the Explorers Club, the Nature Conservancy, the Climate Reality Project. There's so many great organizations now where you can multiply your efforts. And then, as we've seen in our recent history, the single most powerful thing that you can do to help the environment, to help the planet, is to vote. Because the capricious stroke of a pen from an ill-informed or nefarious leader can wipe out everything we can all do as individuals. And you see now, boom, we're back in the Climate Paris Accord. We rejoined the family of nations who are committed to fighting for our planet's climate, which is great. So you have to fight this on every level. And I also think, for scientists that are listening, the science isn't enough, right? Data only speaks to a certain type of person, right? It works on me. I know it works on you, but data doesn't work on everybody. So you have to communicate the climate crisis, yes, through data, but also through art, right? Through graphic art, through music, poetry, film. And you have to communicate with people also as far as engineering solutions, technological solutions. And so some people respond to that. And no matter what kind of person you may be, I think there's an avenue that can touch your heartstrings or hook up with your brain. And we are isolated. We're on this little rocky world. The biosphere, if you go to the bottom of the Marianas Trench to the top of Mount Everest, that's about 12 miles out of the 25,000 miles or so across the Earth. So that's the thickness of an eggshell to an egg. So it's just this little film, this little scum of biosphere that covers this rock. In the deadliness of space, it's not much. It's easy to damage. And that's the only home that we have in the universe. So we better take care of our little lifeboat.
Absolutely. Ken, I'd like to thank you for being on here, not only because you're a wonderful storyteller, and I do believe there is a role for the storyteller. It's what people have been doing since they came out of trees and stood over lakes. But you make people fall in love with science and communication. And to me, that's a rare skill. So thank you for being on Life's Tough, but Explorers Are Tougher. I hope you enjoyed our podcast. Now we have a little favor to ask. We'd really appreciate your support. So make sure to leave us a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss another episode. See you out on the trail.